Hello there, my old friend. Tonight, our quest takes us through a collection of old fairy tales written down by Hans Christian Andersen. Now, settle in, take a deep breath, and let's travel back to an age of myth and legend. The story of a mother. A mother sat by her little child. She was very sad, for she feared it would die. It was quite pale, and its little eyes were closed, and sometimes it drew a heavy deep breath, almost like a sigh, and then the mother gazed more sadly than ever on the poor little creature. Someone knocked at the door, and a poor old man walked in. He was wrapped in something that looked like a great horsecloth, and he required it truly to keep him warm, for it was cold winter. The country everywhere lay covered with snow and ice, and the wind blew so sharply that it cut one's face. The little child had dozed off to sleep for a moment, and the mother, seeing that the old man shivered with the cold, rose and placed a small mug of beer on the stove to warm for him. The old man sat and rocked the cradle, and the mother seated herself on a chair near him and looked at her sick child who still breathed heavily and took hold of its little hand. "You think I shall keep him, do you not?" she said. "Our all-merciful God will surely not take him away from me." The old man, who was indeed death himself, nodded his head in a peculiar manner, which might have signified either yes or no, and the mother cast down her eyes while the tears rolled down her cheeks. Then her head became heavy, for she had not closed her eyes for 3 days and nights, and she slept, but only for a moment. Shivering with cold, she started up and looked round the room. The old man was gone, and her child, it was gone too. The old man had taken it with him. In the corner of the room, the old clock began to strike. Whir went the chains. The heavy weight sank to the ground, and the clock stopped, and the poor mother rushed out of the house calling for her child. Out in the snow sat a woman in long black garments, and she said to the mother, "Death has been with you in your room. I saw him hastening away with your little child. He strides faster than the wind and never brings back what he has taken away." "Only tell me which way he has gone," said the mother. "Tell me the way, I will find him." "I know the way," said the woman in the black garments. "But before I tell you, you must sing to me all the songs that you have sung to your child. I love these songs. I have heard them before. I am night, and I saw your tears flow as you sang." "I will sing them all to you," said the mother, "but do not detain me now. I must overtake him and find my child." But night sat silent and still. Then the mother wept and sang and wrung her hands, and there were many songs, and yet even more tears, till at length night said, "Go to the right, into the dark forest of fir trees, for I saw death take that road with your little child." Within the wood the mother came to crossroads, and she knew not which to take. Just by stood a thorn bush. It had neither leaf nor flower, for it was the cold winter time, and icicles hung on the branches. "Have you not seen death go by with my little child?" she asked. "Yes," replied the thorn bush, "but I will not tell you which way he has taken until you have warmed me in your bosom. I am freezing to death here and turning to ice." Then she pressed the bramble to her bosom quite close, so that it might be thawed, and the thorns pierced her flesh, and great drops of blood flowed. but the bramble shot forth fresh green leaves, and they became flowers on the cold winter's night. So warm is the heart of a sorrowing mother. Then the bramble bush told her the path she must take. She came at length to a great lake, on which there was neither ship nor boat to be seen. The lake was not frozen sufficiently for her to pass over on the ice, nor was it open enough for her to wade through, and yet she must cross it if she wished to find her child. Then she laid herself down to drink up the water of the lake, which was of course impossible for any human being to do. But the bereaved mother thought that perhaps a miracle might take place to help her. "You will never succeed in this," said the lake. "Let us make an agreement together which will be better. I love to collect pearls, and your eyes are the purest I have ever seen. If you will weep those eyes away in tears into my waters, then I will take you to the large hothouse where death dwells and rears flowers and trees, every one of which is a human life." "Oh, what would I not give to reach my child," said the weeping mother. And as she still continued to weep, her eyes fell into the depths of the lake and became 2 costly pearls. Then the lake lifted her up and wafted her across to the opposite shore, as if she were on a swing, where stood a wonderful building many miles in length. No one could tell whether it was a mountain covered with forests and full of caves, or whether it had been built. But the poor mother could not see, for she had wept her eyes into the lake. "Where shall I find Death, who went away with my little child?" she asked. "He has not arrived here yet," said an old grey-haired woman who was walking about and watering Death's hothouse. "How have you found your way here, and who helped you?" "God has helped me," she replied. "He is merciful. Will you not be merciful too?" "Where shall I find my little child?" "I did not know the child," said the old woman, "and you are blind. Many flowers and trees have faded tonight, and death will soon come to transplant them. You know already that every human being has a life tree or a life flower, just as may be ordained for him. They look like other plants, but they have hearts that beat. Children's hearts also beat. From that you may perhaps be able to recognize your child. But what will you give me if I tell you what more you will have to do?" "I have nothing to give," said the afflicted mother, "but I would go to the ends of the earth for you." "I can give you nothing to do for me there," said the old woman, "but you can give me your long black hair. You know yourself that it is beautiful, and it pleases me. You can take my white hair in exchange, which will be something in return." "Do you ask nothing more than that?" said she. "I will give it to you with pleasure." And she gave up her beautiful hair and received in return the white locks of the old woman. Then they went into Death's vast hothouse, where flowers and trees grew together in wonderful profusion. Blooming hyacinths, underglass bells, and peonies like strong trees. There grew water plants, some quite fresh, and others looking sickly, which had water snakes twining round them, and black crabs clinging to their stems. There stood noble palm trees, oaks, and plantains, and beneath them bloomed thyme and parsley. Each tree and flower had a name. Each represented a human life, and belonged to men still living, some in China, others in Greenland, and in all parts of the world. Some large trees had been planted in little pots, so that they were cramped for room, and seemed about to burst the pot to pieces. while many weak little flowers were growing in rich soil, with moss all around them, carefully tended and cared for. The sorrowing mother bent over the little plants and heard the human heart beating in each, and recognized the beatings of her child's heart among millions of others. "That is it," she cried, stretching out her hand towards a little crocus flower which hung down its sickly head. "Do not touch the flower," exclaimed the old woman, "but place yourself here, and when death comes, I expect him every minute. Do not let him pull up that plant, but threaten him that if he does, you will serve the other flowers in the same manner. This will make him afraid, for he must account to God for each of them. None can be uprooted unless he receives permission to do so." There rushed through the hothouse a chill of icy coldness, and the blind mother felt that death had arrived. "How did you find your way hither?" asked he. "How could you come here faster than I have?" "I am a mother," she answered. And Death stretched out his hand towards the delicate little flower, but she held her hands tightly round it, and held it fast at the same time, with the most anxious care, lest she should touch one of the leaves. Then Death breathed upon her hands, and she felt his breath colder than the icy wind, and her hands sank down powerless. "You cannot prevail against me," said Death. "But a God of mercy can," said she. "I only do his will," replied Death. "I am his gardener. I take all his flowers and trees and transplant them into the gardens of paradise in an unknown land. How they flourish there, and what that garden resembles, I may not tell you." "Give me back my child," said the mother, weeping and imploring. And she seized 2 beautiful flowers in her hands and cried to Death, "I will tear up all your flowers, for I am in despair." "Do not touch them," said Death. "You say you are unhappy, and would you make another mother as unhappy as yourself?" "Another mother," cried the poor woman, setting the flowers free from her hands. "There are your eyes," said Death. "I fished them up out of the lake for you. They were shining brightly, but I knew not they were yours. Take them back. They are clearer now than before. And then look into the deep well which is close by here. I will tell you the names of the 2 flowers which you wish to pull up, and you will see the whole future of the human beings they represent, and what you were about to frustrate and destroy." Then she looked into the well, and it was a glorious sight to behold how one of them became a blessing to the world, and how much happiness and joy it spread around. But she saw that the life of the other was full of care and poverty, misery and woe. "Both are the will of God," said Death. "Which is the unhappy flower, and which is the blessed one?" she said. "That I may not tell you," said Death, "but thus far you may learn that one of the 2 flowers represents your own child. It was the fate of your child that you saw, the future of your own child." Then the mother screamed aloud with terror, "Which of them belongs to my child? Tell me that. Deliver the unhappy child. Release it from so much misery. Rather take it away. Take it to the kingdom of God. Forget my tears and my entreaties. Forget all that I have said or done." "I do not understand you," said Death. "Will you have your child back, or shall I carry him away to a place that you do not know?" Then the mother wrung her hands, fell on her knees, and prayed to God, grant not my prayers when they are contrary to thy will, which at all times must be the best. Oh, hear them not. And her head sank on her bosom. Then death carried away her child to the unknown land. The Sunbeam and the Captive. It is autumn. We stand on the ramparts and look out over the sea. We look at the numerous ships and at the Swedish coast on the opposite side of the Sound, rising far above the surface of the waters which mirror the glow of the evening sky. Behind us, the wood is sharply defined. Mighty trees surround us, and the yellow leaves flutter down from the branches. Below, at the foot of the wall, stands a gloomy-looking building enclosed in palisades. The space between is dark and narrow, but still more dismal must it be behind the iron gratings in the wall which cover the narrow loopholes or windows. For in these dungeons, the most depraved of the criminals are confined. A ray of the setting sun shoots into the bare cells of one of the captives, for God's sun shines upon the evil and the good. The hardened criminal casts an impatient look at the bright ray. Then a little bird flies towards the grating, for birds twitter to the just as well as to the unjust. He only cries, "Tweet, tweet," and then perches himself near the grating, flutters his wings, pecks a feather from one of them, puffs himself out, and sets his feathers on end round his breast and throat. The bad chained man looks at him, and a more gentle expression comes into his hard face. In his breast there rises a thought, which he himself cannot rightly analyze, but the thought has some connection with the sunbeam, with the bird, and with the scent of violets, which grow luxuriantly in spring at the foot of the wall. Then there comes the sound of the hunter's horn, merry and full. The little bird starts and flies away. The sunbeam gradually vanishes, and again there is darkness in the room and in the heart of that bad man. Still, the sun has shone into that heart, and the twittering of the bird has touched it. Sound on, ye glorious strains of the hunter's horn. Continue your stirring tones, for the evening is mild, and the surface of the sea, heaving slowly and calmly, is smooth as a mirror. The Swineherd. Once upon a time lived a poor prince. His kingdom was very small, but it was large enough to enable him to marry, and marry he would. It was rather bold of him that he went and asked the emperor's daughter, "Will you marry me?" But he ventured to do so, for his name was known far and wide, and there were hundreds of princesses who would have gladly accepted him. But would she do so? Now we shall see. On the grave of the prince's father grew a rose tree, the most beautiful of its kind. It bloomed only once in 5 years, and then it had only one single rose upon it. But what a rose! It had such a sweet scent that one instantly forgot all sorrow and grief when one smelt it. He had also a nightingale, which could sing as if every sweet melody was in its throat. This rose and the nightingale he wished to give to the princess, and therefore both were put into big silver cases and sent to her. The emperor ordered them to be carried into the great hall, where the princess was just playing visitors are coming, with her ladies-in-waiting. When she saw the large cases with the presents therein, she clapped her hands for joy. "I wish it were a little pussy cat," she said. But then the rose tree with the beautiful rose was unpacked. "Oh, how nicely it is made!" exclaimed the ladies. "It is more than nice," said the emperor. "It is charming." The princess touched it and nearly began to cry. "For shame, Pa," she said. "It is not artificial. It is natural." "For shame, it is natural," repeated all her ladies. "Let us first see what the other case contains before we are angry," said the emperor. Then the nightingale was taken out, and it sang so beautifully that no one could possibly say anything unkind about it. "Superb, charmant," said the ladies of the court, for they all prattled French, one worse than the other. "How much the bird reminds me of the musical box of the late lamented Empress," said an old courtier. "It has exactly the same tone, the same execution." "You are right," said the emperor, and began to cry like a little child. "I hope it is not natural," said the princess. "Yes, certainly it is natural," replied those who had brought the presents. "Then let it fly," said the princess, and refused to see the prince. But the prince was not discouraged. He painted his face, put on common clothes, pulled his cap over his forehead, and came back. "Good day, Emperor," he said. "Could you not give me some employment at the court?" "There are so many," replied the emperor, "who apply for places that for the present I have no vacancy, but I will remember you. But wait a moment, it just comes into my mind. I require somebody to look after my pigs, for I have a great many." Thus the prince was appointed imperial swineherd, and as such he lived in a wretchedly small room near the pigsty. There he worked all day long, and when it was night, he had made a pretty little pot. There were little bells round the rim, and when the water began to boil in it, the bells began to play the old tune. "A jolly old sow once lived in a sty, 3 little piggies had she," and so on. But what was more wonderful was that when one put a finger into the steam rising from the pot, one could at once smell what meals they were preparing on every fire in the whole town. That was indeed much more remarkable than the rose. When the princess with her ladies passed by and heard the tune, she stopped and looked quite pleased, for she also could play it. In fact, it was the only tune she could play, and she played it with one finger. "That is the tune I know," she exclaimed. "He must be a well-educated swineherd. Go and ask him how much the instrument is." One of the ladies had to go and ask, but she put on pattens. "What will you take for your pot?" asked the lady. "I will have 10 kisses from the princess," said the swineherd. "God forbid," said the lady. "Well, I cannot sell it for less," replied the swineherd. "What did he say?" said the princess. "I really cannot tell you," replied the lady. "You can whisper it into my ear." "It is very naughty," said the princess, and walked off. But when she had gone a little distance, the bells rang again so sweetly. "A jolly old sow once lived in a sty, 3 little piggies had she," and so on. "Ask him," said the princess, "if he will be satisfied with 10 kisses from one of my ladies." "No, thank you," said the swineherd. 10 kisses from the princess, or I keep my pot." "That is tiresome," said the princess, "but you must stand before me, so that nobody can see it." The ladies placed themselves in front of her and spread out their dresses, and she gave the swineherd 10 kisses, and received the pot. That was a pleasure. Day and night the water in the pot was boiling. There was not a single fire in the whole town of which they did not know what was preparing on it, the chamberlains as well as the shoemakers. The ladies danced and clapped their hands for joy. We know who will eat soup and pancakes. We know who will eat porridge and cutlets. Oh, how interesting. Very interesting indeed, said the mistress of the household. But you must not betray me, for I am the emperor's daughter. Of course not, they all said. The swineherd, that is to say, the prince, but they did not know otherwise than that he was a real swineherd, did not waste a single day without doing something. He made a rattle, which, when turned quickly round, played all the waltzes, gallops and polkas known since the creation of the world. But that is superb, said the princess passing by. I have never heard a more beautiful composition. Go down and ask him what the instrument costs, but I shall not kiss him again. He will have 100 kisses from the princess, said the lady, who had gone down to ask him. I believe he is mad, said the princess, and walked off, but soon she stopped. One must encourage art, she said. I am the emperor's daughter. Tell him I will give him 10 kisses, as I did the other day. The remainder one of my ladies can give him. But we do not like to kiss him, said the ladies. That is nonsense, said the princess. If I can kiss him, you can also do it. Remember that I give you food and employment. And the lady had to go down once more. 100 kisses from the princess, said the swineherd, or everybody keeps his own. Place yourselves before me, said the princess then. They did as they were bidden, and the princess kissed him. I wonder what that crowd near the pigsty means, said the emperor, who had just come out on his balcony. He rubbed his eyes and put his spectacles on. The ladies of the court are up to some mischief, I think. I shall have to go down and see. He pulled up his shoes, for they were down at the heels, and he was very quick about it. When he had come down into the courtyard, he walked quite softly, and the ladies were so busily engaged in counting the kisses that all should be fair, that they did not notice the emperor. He raised himself on tiptoe. What does this mean? He said, when he saw that his daughter was kissing the swineherd, and then hit their heads with his shoe just as the swineherd received the 68th kiss. Go out of my sight, said the emperor, for he was very angry, and both the princess and the swineherd were banished from the empire. There she stood and cried. The swineherd scolded her, and the rain came down in torrents. Alas, unfortunate creature that I am, said the princess. I wish I had accepted the prince. Oh, how wretched I am. The swineherd went behind a tree, wiped his face, threw off his poor attire, and stepped forth in his princely garments. He looked so beautiful that the princess could not help bowing to him. I have now learned to despise you, he said. You refused an honest prince. You did not appreciate the rose and the nightingale, but you did not mind kissing a swineherd for his toys. You have no one but yourself to blame. And then he returned into his kingdom and left her behind. She could now sing at her leisure. A jolly old sow once lived in a sty, 3 little piggies has she, and so on. the Thistle's experiences. Belonging to the lordly manor house was beautiful, well-kept garden with rare trees and flowers. The guests of the proprietor declared their admiration of it. The people of the neighborhood, from town and country, came on Sundays and holidays and asked permission to see the garden. Indeed, whole schools used to pay visits to it. Outside the garden, by the palings at the roadside, stood a great mighty thistle, which spread out in many directions from the root, so that it might have been called a thistle bush. Nobody looked at it, except the old ass which drew the milkmaid's cart. This ass used to stretch out his neck towards the thistle and say, "You are beautiful. I should like to eat you." But his halter was not long enough to let him reach it and eat it. There was great company at the manor house, some very noble people from the capital, young pretty girls, and among them a young lady who came from a long distance. She had come from Scotland and was of high birth and was rich in land and in gold. A bride worth winning, said more than one of the young gentlemen, and their lady mothers said the same thing. The young people amused themselves on the lawn and played at ball. They wandered among the flowers, and each of the young girls broke off a flower and fastened it in a young gentleman's buttonhole. But the young Scotch lady looked round for a long time in an undecided way. None of the flowers seemed to suit her taste. Then her eye glanced across the paling. Outside stood the great thistle bush with the reddish-blue sturdy flowers. She saw them, she smiled, and asked the son of the house to pluck one for her. "It is the flower of Scotland," she said. "It blooms in the scutcheon of my country. Give me yonder flower." And he brought the fairest blossom and pricked his fingers as completely as if it had grown on the sharpest rose bush. She placed the thistle flower in the buttonhole of the young man, and he felt himself highly honoured. Each of the other young gentlemen would willingly have given his own beautiful flower to have worn this one, presented by the fair hand of the Scottish maiden. And if the son of the house felt himself honoured, what were the feelings of the thistle bush? It seemed to him as if dew and sunshine were streaming through him. "I am something more than I knew of," said the thistle to itself. "I suppose my right place is really inside the palings and not outside. One is often strangely placed in this world, but now I have at least managed to get one of my people within the pale, and indeed into a buttonhole." The thistle told this event to every blossom that unfolded itself, and not many days had gone by before the thistle heard, not from men, not from the twittering of the birds, but from the air itself, which stores up the sounds and carries them far around, out of the most retired walks of the garden and out of the rooms of the house, in which doors and windows stood open, that the young gentleman who had received the thistle flower from the hand of the fair Scottish maiden had also now received the heart and hand of the lady in question. They were a handsome pair. It was a good match. "That match I made up," said the thistle, and he thought of the flower he had given for the buttonhole. Every flower that opened heard of this occurrence. "I shall certainly be transplanted into the garden," thought the thistle, "and perhaps put into a pot which crowds one in. That is said to be the greatest of all honours." And the thistle pictured this to himself in such a lively manner that at last he said with full conviction, "I am to be transplanted into a pot." Then he promised every little thistle flower which unfolded itself that it also should be put into a pot, and perhaps into a buttonhole, the highest honor that could be attained. But not one of them was put into a pot, much less into a buttonhole. They drank in the sunlight and the air, lived on the sunlight by day and on the dew by night, bloomed, were visited by bees and hornets, who looked after the honey, the dowry of the flower, and they took the honey and left the flower where it was. "The thievish rabble," said the thistle, "if I could only stab every one of them. But I cannot." The flowers hung their heads and faded, but after a time, new ones came. "You come in good time," said the thistle. "I am expecting every moment to get across the fence." A few innocent daisies and a long, thin dandelion stood and listened in deep admiration and believed everything they heard. The old ass of the milk cart stood at the edge of the field road and glanced across at the blooming thistle bush, but his halter was too short and he could not reach it. And the thistle thought so long of the thistle of Scotland, to whose family he said he belonged, that he fancied at last that he had come from Scotland, and that his parents had been put into the national escutcheon. That was a great thought, but you see, a great thistle has a right to a great thought. "One is often of so grand a family that one may not know it," said the nettle, who grew close by. He had a kind of idea that he might be made into cambric if he were rightly treated. And the summer went by, and the autumn went by. The leaves fell from the trees, and the few flowers left had deeper colours and less scent. The gardener's boy sang in the garden across the palings. "Up the hill, down the dale we wend. That is life, from beginning to end." The young fir trees in the forest began to long for Christmas, but it was a long time to Christmas yet. "Here I am standing yet," said the thistle. "It is as if nobody thought of me, and yet I managed the match. They were betrothed, and they have had their wedding. It is now a week ago. I won't take a single step because I can't." A few more weeks went by. The thistle stood there with his last single flower large and full. This flower had shot up from near the roots. The wind blew cold over it, and the colours vanished, and the flower grew in size and looked like a silvered sunflower. One day, the young pair, now man and wife, came into the garden. They went along by the paling, and the young wife looked across it. "There's the great thistle still growing," she said. "It has no flowers now." "Oh yes, the ghost of the last one is there still," said he, and he pointed to the silvery remains of the flower, which looked like a flower themselves. "It is pretty, certainly," she said. "Such an one must be carved on the frame of our picture." And the young man had to climb across the palings again, and to break off the calyx of the thistle. It pricked his fingers, but then he had called it a ghost. And this thistle calyx came into the garden, and into the house, and into the drawing room. There stood a picture. Young couple. A thistle flower was painted in the buttonhole of the bridegroom. They spoke about this, and also about the thistle flower they brought, the last thistle flower. now gleaming like silver, whose picture was carved on the frame, and the breeze carried what was spoken away, far away. What one can experience, said the thistle bush. My firstborn was put into a buttonhole, and my youngest has been put in a frame. Where shall I go? And the ass stood by the roadside and looked across at the thistle. Come to me, my nibble darling, said he. I can't get across to you. But the thistle did not answer. He became more and more thoughtful, kept on thinking and thinking till near Christmas, and then a flower of thought came forth. If the children are only good, the parents do not mind standing outside the garden pale. That's an honourable thought, said the Sunbeam. You shall also have a good place. In a pot or in a frame? Asked the Thistle. In a story, replied the Sunbeam. The Thorny Road of Honor. An old story yet lives of the Thorny Road of Honor, of a marksman who indeed attained to rank and office, but only after a lifelong and weary strife against difficulties. Who has not, in reading this story, thought of his own strife and of his own numerous difficulties? The story is very closely akin to reality, but still it has its harmonious explanation here on earth, while reality often points beyond the confines of life to the regions of eternity. The history of the world is like a magic lantern that displays to us, in light pictures upon the dark ground of the present, how the benefactors of mankind, the martyrs of genius, wandered along the thorny road of honor. From all periods and from every country, these shining pictures display themselves to us. Each only appears for a few moments, but each represents a whole life, sometimes a whole age, with its conflicts and victories. Let us contemplate here and there one of the company of martyrs, the company which will receive new members until the world itself shall pass away. We look down upon a crowded amphitheatre. Out of the clouds of Aristophanes, satire and humour are pouring down in streams upon the audience. On the stage, Socrates, the most remarkable man in Athens, he who had been the shield and defence of the people against the 30 tyrants, is held up mentally and bodily to ridicule. Socrates, who saved Alcibiades and Xenophon in the turmoil of battle, and whose genius soared far above the gods of the ancients. He himself is present. He has risen from the spectators' bench and has stepped forward, that the laughing Athenians may well appreciate the likeness between himself and the caricature on the stage. There he stands before them, towering high above them all. Thou juicy, green, poisonous hemlock, throw thy shadow over Athens, not thou, olive tree of fame. 7 cities contended for the honour of giving birth to Homer. That is to say, they contended after his death. Let us look at him as he was in his lifetime. He wanders on foot through the cities and recites his verses for a livelihood. The thought for the morrow turns his hair grey. He, the great seer, is blind and painfully pursues his way. The sharp thorn tears the mantle of the king of poets. His song yet lives, and through that alone live all the heroes and gods of antiquity. One picture after another springs up from the east, from the west, far removed from each other in time and place, and yet each one forming a portion of the thorny road of honor, on which the thistle indeed displays a flower. but only to adorn the grave. The camels pass along under the palm trees. They are richly laden with indigo and other treasures of value, sent by the ruler of the land to him whose songs are the delight of the people, the fame of the country. He whom envy and falsehood have driven into exile has been found, and the caravan approaches the little town in which he has taken refuge. A poor corpse is carried out of the town gate, and the funeral procession causes the caravan to halt. The dead man is he whom they have been sent to seek, Fiduci, who has wandered the thorny road of honor even to the end. The African, with blunt features, thick lips, and woolly hair, sits on the marble steps of the palace in the capital of Portugal and begs. He is the submissive slave of Camoens, and but for him, and for the copper coins thrown to him by the passers-by, his master, the poet of the Lusiad, would die of hunger. Now, a costly monument marks the grave of Camoens. There is a new picture. Behind the iron grating, a man appears, pale as death, with long, unkempt beard. "I have made a discovery," he says, "the greatest that has been made for centuries, and they have kept me locked up here for more than 20 years. Who is the man?" "A madman," replies the keeper of the madhouse. What whimsical ideas these lunatics have. He imagines that one can propel things by means of steam. It is Solomon de Cares, the discoverer of the power of steam, whose theory, expressed in dark words, is not understood by Richelieu, and he dies in the madhouse. Here stands Columbus, whom the street boys used once to follow and jeer, because he wanted to discover a new world, and he has discovered it. Shouts of joy greet him from the breasts of all, and the clash of bells sounds to celebrate his triumphant return. But the clash of the bells of envy soon drowns the others. The discoverer of a world, he who lifted the American gold land from the sea and gave it to his king, he is rewarded with iron chains. He wishes that these chains may be placed in his coffin, for they witness to the world of the way in which a man's contemporaries reward good service. One picture after another comes crowding on. The thorny path of honor and of fame is overfilled. Here in dark night sits the man who measured the mountains in the moon, he who forced his way out into the endless space among stars and planets. He, the mighty man who understood the spirit of nature and felt the earth moving beneath his feet, Galileo. Blind and deaf he sits, an old man thrust through with the spear of suffering, and amid the torments of neglect, scarcely able to lift his foot, that foot with which, in the anguish of his soul, when men denied the truth, he stamped upon the ground with the exclamation, "Yet it moves." Here stands a woman of childlike mind, yet full of faith and inspiration. She carries the banner in front of the combating army and brings victory and salvation to her fatherland. The sound of shouting arises, and the pile flames up. They are burning the witch, Joan of Arc. Yes, and a future century jeers at the white lily. Voltaire, the satyr of human intellect, writes La Pucelle. At the Thing or Assembly at Viborg, the Danish nobles burn the laws of the king. They flame up high, illuminating the period and the lawgiver, and throw a glory into the dark prison tower, where an old man is growing grey and bent. With his finger, he marks out a groove in the stone table. It is the popular king who sits there, once the ruler of 3 kingdoms, the friend of the citizen and the peasant. It is Christian II. Enemies wrote his history. Let us remember his improvements of 7 and 20 years, if we cannot forget his crime. A ship sails away, quitting the Danish shores. A man leans against the mast, casting a last glance towards the island Huin. It is Tycho Brahe. He raised the name of Denmark to the stars and was rewarded with injury, loss, and sorrow. He is going to a strange country. The vault of heaven is above me everywhere, he says, and what do I want more? And away sails the famous Dane, the astronomer, to live honored and free in a strange land. I free, if only from the unbearable sufferings of the body. Comes in a sigh through time and strikes upon our ear. What a picture. Griffenfeld, a Danish Prometheus, bound to the rocky island of Munkholm. We are in America, on the margin of one of the largest rivers. An innumerable crowd has gathered, for it is said that a ship is to sail against the wind and weather, bidding defiance to the elements. The man who thinks he can solve the problem is named Robert Fulton. The ship begins its passage, but suddenly it stops. The crowd begins to laugh and whistle and hiss. The very father of the man whistles with the rest. Conceit, foolery, is the cry. It has happened just as he deserved. Put the crack brain under lock and key. Then suddenly a little nail breaks, which had stopped the machine for a few moments. And now the wheels turn again. The floats break the force of the waters, and the ship continues its course. And the beam of the steam engine shortens the distance between far lands from hours into minutes. O human race, canst thou grasp the happiness of such a minute of consciousness, this penetration of the soul by its mission, the moment in which all dejection and every wound, even those caused by one's own fault, is changed into health and strength and clearness, when discord is converted to harmony, the minute in which men seem to recognize the manifestation of the heavenly grace in one man, and feel how this one imparts it to all. Thus the thorny path of honor shows itself as a glory, surrounding the earth with its beams. Thrice happy he who is chosen to be a wanderer there, and, without merit of his own, to be placed between the builder of the bridge and the earth, between providence and the human race. On mighty wings the spirit of history floats through the ages and shows, giving courage and comfort and awakening gentle thoughts on the dark nightly background, but in gleaming pictures, the thorny path of honor, which does not, like a fairy tale, end in brilliancy and joy here on earth, but stretches out beyond all time, even into eternity. And so, our quest through these timeless tales comes to an end. With the story's final words, you have completed this sleepy quest. May your dreams be filled with magic until the next adventure begins. Rest well, traveler.